Hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome all to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series. And my guest tonight is Mr. Harris Gardner. And what you really need to know about Harris, and I'm going to jump outside of his bio, is Harris is a wonderful poet. He is a wonderful person and very strong in the poetry community. And if you really want to find out all about Harris, when you go to buy his book on Amazon, you can read about Harris here. He's been an editor, poetry editor for Ibbotson Street in 2010. He has authored 4 poetry collections. It's just, he's got a Harris is a very, very modest individual. And he really has a lot of wonderful credits. And there is his book, No Time for Death, which was born in January 2022, and it's a marvelous book. So I am looking forward to hearing Harris read from it, and then talking to him later on. So take it away, Harris.
Well, thanks very much, and thank you to our family and friends and poet friends who joined us tonight. And Tim, thank you for curating this venue. Tim has curated and founded the Dire series about 20 years ago. 17 of those years were live. And I guess the last 2 years, because of COVID, has been online, which sometimes reached a larger audience since COVID has reduced a lot of in-person venues. At any rate, I'm going to mix and match some of them. If you came to my launch back in February, may have heard some of these, but I'm going to add a couple more here and there. I'd like to start with another poet, and other than myself, and the one I usually start with is Yeats, The Second Coming, W.B. Yeats. And at any rate, The Second Coming was written after the Russian Revolution and at the conclusion of World War I, when things were rather chaotic in the world, nevertheless. The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, and the blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are the words out, when a vast image out of spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body, the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast is our come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? That being 22 lines also means I can maybe sneak in a couple of extra poems if I keep to the short ones. I'm kind of paraphrasing what Tim said the other night. Okay, the next one is a sneak peek at a poet's will. And one needs to be very careful with pronunciation and enunciation of the title, lest it sound like sneak peek at a poet's will. Anyway, you don't have to laugh at that because that'll only encourage me to be even more corny. So, sneak peek at a poet's will. Verses nurtured in marrow from singing bones under layers of dust. Item, stanzas dressed in flesh from the heart, draped in surplus brain pulsations, wrapped in packet with blood red ribbon. Item, excess of bottled tears sprinkles pavement, grows roses that bite when one stops to inhale. Item, lines borrowed or stolen, nudge blank minds in bold directions, serve fresh on special occasions, bury stale thoughts separately. Item, crumpled bag home to a few nibbled on metaphors, most emotions spent, some wisely relish the remnants. Item, the desk that birthed overburdened pages can be left to no one. It labors without complaint when images gallop off the paper, become ingrained in splinters and stains. The legs wobble, speak with creaks, unwritten versions. Item, volumes of verses captured with accurate tone, uh, written on napkins, other inspired fragments thrown in drawers for the moment. This is not the final statement, premature to lament unwritten versions. Volumes will increase, collections bound, the will be done. That was written in response to a earlier poem by Galway Cannell. His poem was attending the reading of a poet's will. So my next one. The next one is one I haven't read recently. That's why I have to look for the page. I'll have it in 1 second though. Okay. Recently, it was the Jewish high holidays. So this one may have echoes of another poet and is not a coincidence, is deliberate. So anyway, this one is called Stopping by the Shul. A shul basically is a Orthodox synagogue. So this is Stopping by the Shul after Robert Frost. Whose shul this is, I think I know. His home is in the shtetl, though. He will not see me stopping here to offer utmost solemn prayer at perhaps the holiest time of year. He would wonder what hidden mistake would make my voice quiver and my knees quake as I daven near a calm and reflecting lake. New mitzvahs are vowed to heal the earth, to show the evidence of our worth, a chance for cleansing and future mirth. The ram's horn's voice is rich and deep. I am weary, the way is steep, but there are pledges to God and man to keep. This one is called Entreaty to the Trees. It's quasi-environmental. Exhale, entreaty to the trees. Exhale that we may breathe. Spread your branches to shade and to shield. Yield your limbs that we may sit or slumber. Make a home for other creatures. Blaze without fire in altered season. Enlighten us in leaves' dulcet discourse. Be watchful and pray away the wooden axe handle. Be a sentinel over the living and dead. Nourish with your full-blown fruit. Bind the earth before it bursts. The next one is a poem I don't want to brag because I'm quite modest, but this was in the Harvard Review. And it came as a result, the poem was written as a result of a conversation with the late Walter Howard. And he quoted a quote from Flaubert, and the quote is my epigraph. A woman was said to Flaubert, I wrote 20,000 words today. What did you do? Flaubert replied, I removed the comma that I put in last week. The title of this poem is Comma. A comma tiptoes into all our lives. We pause as we pursue our sentence. No comma burrows within the bones. A comma constricts the breath when winter's hand grips the throat. A comma fish hooks your gut when the burden snags you in the net. A comma slow motions your dreams that drip through intravenous tubes. A comma gnaws through the ropes after death. The voice of the bell peals, then pauses. Okay. I'm going to end with this one. It's called Mourn the Monarch. No one prescribed this diet. It is not a matter of weight. The shells for survival of fruited plains, amber waves of grain genetically honed, altered states of corn are committing regicide to orange brilliance wedded to widows' exquisite lace. We are woven into the tapestry. When you warp the freight food chain, what will remain on the moribund menu? Milk, no harmful to your health, the same as meat with all its hormones. Tomatoes, same problem as beef. Potatoes, you don't want to know about potatoes. Jellyfish genes to make the harvest iridescent for magnificent moisture control. The whitecoats are coming, the whitecoats are coming. Sound the clarion from highest cliffs. Land of our birth is bloated with full mutant bread baskets. Biotech savants are force feeding the masses. So you don't like the food. We have ways to make you eat it. Where does it say use caution with these ingredients? What effect on pregnant earth? Milkweed wings fold forever. Fingers bleed as grip slips. A bit of membrane lingers. Strands drift while bones sleep. Most butterflies are free, but the monarchs are dying.
All right. Thank you so much, Harris. You ready for a little chat now?
I am.
So Jennifer Barber, who founded Salamander Magazine, read your latest collection and said that that you are sharply aware of mortality and how do we understand the passing of time and our place in it. Now, poets are philosophers. So what is our place in time?
Our place in time, I don't know what to be optimistic or pessimistic. The pessimist in me says that we are minuscule in the cosmos. And yet, everything plus the cosmos, all of us plus one equals one another. So we have a responsibility both to preserve the earth, which is our immediate home, and then hope that there will be a better future. Did I answer the question?
Sure, it's a great answer. Now, with No Time for Death, you explore some of those concepts. Now, was there a particular death that launched you into the writing of this book, or were you affected by something more like, the pandemic or something to that effect?
This book was I think I should be entered in the Guinness Book of World Records for the length of time this book was in the making. I started this book about 15 years ago, and then I reached a certain point where none of it worked. So I tore it apart and rewrote it, I think, over the last 3 to 5 years. Um, what influenced it? Well, many things. Starting about 5 years ago, I discovered that my mind and heart are still relatively young, but my body is aging. And so the I've always had a thing about mortality, and the time factor. Time seems to accelerate as as we age, and especially once we get past middle age. Um, Mortality. I have perhaps a mixed view about it. Half of me says, well, carpe diem, and the other half of me says, well, be brave and be bold and laugh in the face of death. I mean, especially one's own, because we're not going to be here forever. So make the most of when you are here.
You once told me that some of the poems you write have take months to write, and that you edit and you pick them at them until they're finished. Are some of your poems never finished?
I think a poem in general is never finished. I'll reference a reading went to for Galway Canal. He was reading for a published collection, and he slipped a word in, and he said, that wasn't there, but I like it better. So he's whipped out his pencil or pen and wrote it right in the poem in the book. Um, if you're lucky enough to have a second printing or more, then you have a chance to revise more in between. Um, One thing I tell people when they submit to Ibison Street, there's a plug, Doug Holder, if you're listening. Anyway, I tell them read, 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 revise, 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 and write, write, write.
In,
So
ter- in terms of read, 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 I've seen you so many times giving away books because you have so many books in your house. So, how many books do you keep in circulation, and out of the numbers that you give away?
um, I lost count of what I give away. I used to sell the books, and then I got to the point where I was giving it away because I was working full time and I didn't need them, although I can always use money. I wasn't as tight for money as I was when I was selling the books. And I'm downsizing right now. I had 950 books in my own personal library. Now I'm down to about 750. Uh, but Lainey, my friend, tells me that I'm gradually adding back to them. So I have to agree with that. But I'm being very selective when I add back. I'm very selective what I add to my library now.
And just to clarify, the books you give away aren't your poetry books because you want to sell
Yeah,
your books,
right.
correct?
Right. My book is for sale is $18, which works out to about 25 cents a page. But regrettably or not, you have to buy the whole collection. And but it's worth every dime. I'll tell you that ahead of time.
Now, your book has some very moving poems based on your Jewish heritage. So, do you feel that poetry keeps heritages alive, or the opposite, that heritages create good poems?
That's a hard question, but a good question. I think culture and poetry are interrelated. It's very hard to separate the two. I mean, you can write outside of your culture. I certainly do. But sooner or later, your culture comes home to roost in your writing. Um, um, I had a chapbook um, that was published by Doug Holder, Ibison Press, called Lest They Become. And that was all about culture, you know, myths, Jewish myths, stories, family, and culture. So it is, I don't always think about my culture when I'm writing a poem. What I do have in common, a common thread in this book is, although it's a serious subject, a lot of the poems have a kind of undercurrent of humor flowing through them, which is deliberate.
You've hosted and discovered, was the proprietor of many poetry series, and I can't even name. There's 5, 10 of them. I read them on your bio and was very impressed by that. But without hurting anyone's feelings in this room, who was the one feature that you had that you said to yourself, "Wow, I can't believe this person is reading at one of my series"?
Mm, two. Can I name two?
Of course.
Okay, Arthur Weaver and Franz Wright.
Those are wonderful poets, and how about your co-discovering? You're all about community and poetry community, which is wonderful. Tell me about how you and Doug invented and discovered the bagel bards. What was the conversation like? What was the conversation like that about?
I was over a cup of coffee, and I don't know if it was other bagel bites, but he said he had a brainstorm, and what did I think about it? And so I gave him my 25 cents worth of reflection and reaction and response, which was all positive. And as Doug would say, I was on it like a yellow dog on a meat truck. And he gives me credit for co-founding it. I do think that's very generous. Um, in the beginning, well, for many years in the beginning, we've been, Bagel Bar's been around for 15 years roughly, going on to 16. And I'd say in the first half of those years, maybe a little longer, I would do a paragraph exhorting people to come out on Saturday morning, for coffee, camaraderie, and croissants. And when I was doing the paragraph, we had a pretty good, turnout, or at least it generated the initial growth of the bagel bards. Initially, we're in the basement of Finagle a Bagel, where Bagel Bards originally acquired its name. Uh, and the long form of our name was Breaking Bagels with the Bards. But, soon the nickname, or the shorter version, overtook it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it was a good thing you guys didn't first meet at a Greek place. You would have been the baklava bards.
Yeah.
So, is it important to have groups of people to support you in, such activities like bagel bards, like socially and professionally? Is that an important part of being a poet?
I didn't quite understand the question.
Is having a support group an important part of being a poet and being able to produce work?
I think it's an important thing if you're going to be an activist and if you're going to produce venues and if you're going to do your writing. I've been very fortunate. I don't want to embarrass Lainey, but she was my major muse. And as I was growing, getting better as a poet, I mean, I've been writing poetry since I was 15, but I think I've only been writing my best poetry in the last 25 plus years. And coincidentally, that's how long I've known Lainey. And she's always challenged me to improve my poetry, to work at it, that if it comes too easily, I'm not working hard enough. Um, Other people, I had a 10th grade teacher, Barbara Ferguson, and she was the first one who sort of got the stirrings of poetry in me with homework and assignment in poetry. And there's been a lot of people, even family, have been supportive of my poetry. Maybe they were amused somewhat that I turned out to be a poet. Um, I was in real estate for about 35 odd years. But once I turned 50, uh, maybe I neglected that a little bit in favor of my creative side. Um, but family, friends, other poets, reading a lot. There's a lot of influences that influence the growth of a poet and my, referring at least to myself.
Speaking about growth of a poet, you received a citation from the Massachusetts House of Representatives. That must have been a proud moment for you.
Yep, it was a very proud moment, and especially the citation was sponsored by Denise Provost. Here I go dropping names again, and she was a state rep for many years, very popular state rep, and um, she's currently the co-president of the New England Poetry Club, and she's the one who made that happen. And I still have it. And that was in 2015. And paper can be very fragile, but this one survived.
Now, as you said, you've been writing some of your best poems in 25 years, and poetry tends to have trends. So, what do you currently see are the trends in poetry?
Well, I don't know if I'm encouraging trends with Ibison Street, but I like accessible poetry that communicates emotions, that communicates thoughtfulness, has a certain spontaneity and a certain freshness. Um, what some people call cutting edge poetry, experimental poetry. I'm a little bit old school because, I have to admit that some of the extreme experimental poetry doesn't even look like what to me defines poetry.
Yeah, the first poem I ever got published was through Ibbotson, and there's a certain strange feeling about being published amongst poet laureates and well-known decorated poets. As an editor, do you look to mix brand new poets with well-known poets?
All the time, every issue.
All right. Well, we covered a lot here tonight, Harris, and I want to make sure that people have one more chance to take a look at your book, and there it is. And you don't, just because I'm showing it on the Amazon page, you don't have to buy it on Amazon, but this is pretty easy to. But they're bookshop.org. There's your local independent bookstores. There
Yeah.
is bigger bookstores. So Harris, what is your favorite local independent bookstore that you
Wow.
stopped your book?
Okay. Can I see you? Because, okay. That price was wrong. It looked like it said 1026 or something like that. It's 18. And the best place to order it is from Trevena Bava Press. And that's my publisher, Gloria Mindock. And, you can also order from me. But I like to support the press also. Um, Amazon is okay, but they've absorbed a lot of independent stores. So I don't want to be contrarian because I want to sell books, but I think support the smaller presses like Trevena Bava Press and support your local bookstores. I'm not in a lot of bookstores because they take a lot of um, they take roughly 40%. And I invest in the books, and 40% I would almost not break even. But at any rate, um, it's $18. Uh, if you order through me, I will pay the shipping, which is sometimes considerable, as long as you're in the New England region. If you're in California, mailing could get quite expensive. But at any rate, if anybody has other questions, don't be afraid to ask me. I don't mind impromptu questions if you don't mind impromptu answers.
Sure, just a few minutes of that. That'd be great. If anyone wants to unmute and ask a quick question.
No. Okay, I
All
think they
right.
want to get on with it. Open mic.
So folks that have tuned in on the live stream on Facebook, thank you so much. Use the link if you want to come in for the open mic. That is next. So I will welcome you in with open clicks of my computer. And next week we have Lisa Taylor, another poet. So please come back for that. Harris, thank you so much for your graciousness and your wonderful poetry.
Tim, thanks for having me.